Hi, and welcome back to the Journey podcast. I'm Russell Hewes and joined again today by
Steve Pisano.
Welcome back, Steve.
I'm very glad to be able to chair this meeting again. Well, it's not really a meeting, it's
No.
actually a conversation, but a really interesting one.
Yeah, so last week we gave a bit of insight into what the Journey podcast was about and who it was aimed at. I thought it might be quite interesting for you to give your sort of version of what you think we're doing.
Well, I'll have a go, Russell. For me, the journey is essentially your journey to becoming a professional working in London after quite challenging circumstances, very kind of difficult first part of time when you came to London, and the story of when you're at school and how that influences you as you try to get into the world of work and how you've got around some of those real significant challenges is going to resonate, I think, with lots of people out there. So the podcast is about sharing journeys, about getting into the world of work and taking on the chin all the knocks that you get through, your first attempts to get out there in the world of work and how you get around them. And you want to bring as many people into this conversation as possible, especially through your networks.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good summary of what it is that we're trying to do here. I think I'd expand a little bit on that. And,
Please.
One of the things when I was younger, and I feel probably for a lot of young people, is that, when we try to access careers or look at ideas of what it is that it is we want to be, whether it be a professional football player or a doctor or even a tradesman, I feel there's not a great amount of information out there. You get taken to the job trade show or you get a careers officer, and a lot of the time I don't think they give you any real insight into the real world and how things actually operate. So another thing that I'm hoping to give back in this podcast is by bringing people on who can give a bit of insight into their own journey of their career path and what it is they do and sort of the steps that they could take, traditional methods of going to university, but also less traditional methods of just leaving school and going straight into work.
Okay, or some other vocational route.
Yep.
So before we kind of get on to where we got to last time, we've had a bit of feedback, haven't we, from the first podcast?
Yes, we have actually. It's been quite positive actually. Wasn't expecting this sort of reaction, if I'm being honest.
And so let's have a look at some, rattle the pages over because there's so many of them. Let's have a look at some of the comments that we've had. So Joe Connolly, who is a big friend of both of us, he said, really enjoyed it and learnt a lot about you and your dad, your old man, etc. Thought it was done well to set the context for the podcast, even though it was more about the formative years. My son Ethan, who's living in Sydney, basically just said, loved the podcast. Quite interesting that he didn't embellish that, which is not out of the ordinary.
A man of many words.
Yes, exactly. Jin said, enjoyed the podcast, Russ. Better than expected. Will be interesting to see if you can grab the attention of those outside of those we know.
Yeah, to be honest, that's something that I'm also interested, because obviously it's great that all of friends, family and people we know are finding this enjoyable, but whether it can transcend past that.
But there is someone who you don't know who got in touch through Instagram, said, this is Flavia_A_K, said, amazing story. Nice to know there's another East African out there killing it.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, who was that?
That was Flavia_A_K.
Thanks, Flavia_A_K.
So
shout out to all the East Africans out there and all the Africans actually across the world.
Last time we covered, Kenya up to 12, Southwest London education and community up to 16.
Yep.
Where's the story? Where's the journey going today?
So the journey is now, I guess, me kind of getting into, I'm not quite becoming a man, but I would say becoming a man, standing on my own 2 feet and trying to find out who I am, what it is that I'm going to do in this big wide world, and I guess exploring and challenging myself, as well as having a few run-ins with different parts of society.
So where does this start? Start at Richmond College?
Yeah, so I went to Richmond College, which I was actually quite excited about. I guess there was one really positive thing for me and my peers is there was quite a few of us that from Rutlish High School that went. So obviously at the beginning that was a very positive thing in that, you felt quite safe. There's quite a few of us going over there. My best mate John Michelle, some of my other friends and peers, Shem, Lukeman. So there was quite a few of us when we went over there, and obviously I wouldn't say a complete rowdy bunch, but I guess it gave us a bit more confidence than maybe some of the other people going to the college. So it was a great start to sort of the secondary or
sixth form equivalent. Yeah.
Sixth form equivalent. So I decided to do. What were you studying? So I did business. Oh. So I think this was the first time that I realised that I had a real interest in business. I didn't mention in the last podcast, but I used to. I didn't really get much pocket money, so I used to have to think of ways of how to increase £3 into more amounts of money. So. Early on it was, buying and selling magazines and selling them in school, or, upgrading anything you can. Forgot to mention as well, music was a big part of growing up back then, and it was like old school garage. So a lot of one of my friends, Stephen Gred, he used to have a tape cassette machine that he was able to record the radio and then make extra copies of. So in our little friendship group, we were always up to something, trying to make a bit of money. Dizzy Rascal, I Love You tapes, Sidewinder, that sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of what gave me the insight into doing business, and I kind of wanted to learn about how to handle money and how it all worked. And do you know what, actually, thinking back, it was the first lesson in what you think something is going to be like to what it actually ends up being. So, I thought of business as this amazing opportunity to learn, of thriving, how to make money and how to understand how it flows and, how to be successful. And God, it was a bit of a shock to the system because it was really, really boring. I remember it actually now clearly, and it's funny now that I'm saying it on the podcast, but a lot of the elements that I was learning there, I didn't actually apply till very late on into my own business career. Cash flow, forecast, profit, loss, net, all of these things. So I guess when I go thinking back, it was kind of an exciting time for me at the college because, I had a big group of friends, and back then it was, you're starting to grow up and it's all about fashion and girls and all of that sort of thing. And then at the same time on the educational side, it was kind of a bit like, oh, this is not what I was expecting.
So you weren't gripped
by
the learning experience?
No, not at all, actually. And I think a lot of my peers actually in the class probably felt the same. It was very, very underwhelming. And I don't know if that's because it was to do with the teacher. I remember her bringing in different business people. This guy who had a clothing company, and he also had a music label. And, I remember thinking, oh, that's exciting. There's someone, it was a young black guy as well. And he was doing his thing, and he brought in some T-shirts and telling us about his branding. But that's the only part of that course that really sticks out. And I guess what I'm trying to get across is that, now thinking about the concept of this podcast is, a lot of the time, and it must be the same for a lot of people, you go into something expecting to all these thrills and all the positive things of what it might be to do a course or a career or or a business or anything in your life, and actually the reality of it is sometimes can be a hard slap in the face.
So okay, so before we move on from Richmond, how much of that was having realistic or unrealistic expectations of what you were going into? I mean, how well, because I know you're a fast moving mind. Your mind moves fast, you think quickly, you move quickly. Did you do the research, do your homework to sort of get the right fit for the course that you wanted?
I thought I did, but I guess it goes back to when you're at back in secondary school. I think, you know, a lot of the decisions that you're being asked to make then were what university you're going to. You know, I remember like when you're doing your GCSEs, all of your grades and everything, you know, it's all kind of lining up the stars, as it were, to what university you're going to go to, what sixth form you're going to go into, which one is going to accept you based on your grades and your attendance and everything else. And as we discussed in the last podcast, you know, I wasn't really being pushed externally, so I didn't have this pressure that I guess some of the other students had, or some of the other kids with families, to, you know, to have a set route as to where you were going to go. I kind of was, you know, whether it was a lucky thing or not, I kind of got to choose my own route. I didn't really, you know, mum was very strict, you know, had to be doing something, you know, had to go to college, but she didn't really push me into what it is I want to do. And I guess my mum actually owned businesses in Kenya. She used to own her own hairdressing shop. So maybe there was a part of me that, you know, looked into that. Because in my early years, I wanted to be a pilot. You know, that was my driving force. Even when I came to England, you know, I was like, I'm going to do geography, I'm going to do maths, I'm going to do science, because I want to be a pilot. And then, you know, later on I realized that I didn't want to sit in a cockpit for like 8 hours a day, you know, and the reason I wanted to be a pilot was because I enjoyed traveling, and I associated that with flying between Kenya and England in my younger years. And I was lucky to identify that. Otherwise I would have spent my whole like 6 years of my education trying to be a pilot, end up in a bloody pilot's cockpit, realizing whilst the life is great, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you get paid well, you know, you're in charge of a lot of people, but really, you know, it's on autopilot for most of the journey. And other than visiting nice places, which you can do in other ways.
So let's take this all back then to my question, which was how well prepared were you for this business course, in the sense of what you were expecting? And you're kind of saying that you had to kind of figure things out for yourself, and there wasn't a lot of guidance around.
Yeah.
And the course itself, what were you hoping it was going to lead to? Yeah,
I think so. Going back, I think the guidance that we were getting from school was about what uni you're going to go to and what degree. And I knew, you know, I think I always say I was lucky. I knew quite early on, like, I didn't want to be a doctor, I didn't want to be a lawyer, I didn't want to be sort of a scientist. So any of the key, you know, career paths for me that you needed to have a good formal education and go to university for, at that early stage, I knew that didn't really interest me that much. And so I guess I didn't need to apply any pressure on myself. And then I guess kind of the business route was thinking that it was something that, one, obviously must have thought, oh, that's what my mum did, she owned her own business. And two, you know, already having some early sort of plays and hustling and bustling and dealing with money and that sort of thing, I guess was an exciting thing for me. And some of my peers that were from my school, like Shem, they were doing business and were very similar minded in our attitudes. So I guess it was kind of like a thing that I thought would be good. But yeah, I didn't do any formal research, I guess, to answer the question.
No guidance around
going
into business or going to a business course.
No,
you just had to,
I mean, even the open day,
find out.
Yeah, you applied, you know, I had the grades to get in. I got the maths, English, so I got the grades. You know, I don't even remember reading, you know, the curriculum too well. You know, you're going to learn about cash flow, profit and loss, net, you know, you as a young kid, you're thinking, yeah, great, this is great, let's go.
So, okay, didn't work out.
Well, no, I wouldn't say it didn't work out. I'd say that for me, it was a good time. Richmond College was great because, you know, now you're mixing in with, you know, with other parts of London, you know, so now it's like West London, Richmond. It was Richmond College was quite set in quite a nice area. So yeah, I guess it was an opportunity to be with the boys and start, you know, a bit further away from home. You know, whilst I did go to all of the lectures and classes and you know, and I definitely was taking it all in. For me, my more memories was like, you know, exploring music, meeting other people from other, you know, different parts of the city, and like discussing music, trading music, you know, talking like fashion, you know, it was like 16, 17. So that was more sort of my prolific memories, going to the library, talking to girls, all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, we used to call that the hidden curriculum. It's not what you intended to learn, but it's much more important than what you were intending to learn, what you actually did learn. So when I said it didn't work out, I mean, you didn't continue with it, did you?
No, no, I didn't continue with it. So I got I think I didn't get a distinction. I actually got a pass in that, and so for me it was just a great year at college, but for one reason or another I was like, nah, I'm not going to continue this on.
You were influenced, weren't you, by your next step?
Yeah, so I guess this is the first point where you're kind of a little bit lost, aren't you? I was a bit lost. It's like, oh, what am I going to do next? Should I go find another course from Richmond College? You know, I quite enjoyed that year. Or what was I was going to do at that time? My best friend John Michelle, he was talking about doing health and social care course at Carl Shorten College. And, you know, I was like, yeah, all the girls are going to be on the course, all this stuff. And he's probably going to kill me for saying that. But yeah, so for me, was just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Didn't really know what I was going to do. And I spoke to a couple friends and family, and they were always like, oh, you're really good with people. You know, why don't you think about doing the health and social care course as well? So in my head, you know, people were like, oh, you're really good with people, social worker. So I was thinking about these sort of different routes, but again, didn't really do any research into it. Kind of followed my best mate into the course on the promise of loads of girls in a class and everything else. So off I went to Carl Shorten College. And
that's a massive shift, isn't it, from business to a sort of kind of social services type course? Yeah,
this one's I was a bit more prepared for this one, actually. Yeah. I did a bit more research on this. I looked at the curriculum. You know, I was actually now thinking about how this could turn into a career. I know John was going in for particular reasons, but you know, I was obviously exploring my own ideas of what it would mean, health and social care. You know, I think the thing that you don't understand about college courses, and for me at the time, is that you don't get to specialize or pick a specific avenue that you want. You know, when you go to do the course, it's like you learn about working with old people, you learn about working with children in nursery, you know, so you didn't get to choose your placement, so you get put a placement. I remember we get put in a nursery school in Wimbledon, and obviously, yeah, it was nice. Went there, they like welcomed me, and it was a week, and it was just like all these screaming kids, and I think I knew at that point, you know, I was like, okay, this is what health and social care is about. It's like looking after, you know, different parts of the society and learning the skills to. And whilst I did learn a lot there, I kind of knew, like, you know, this wasn't for me either. And so during this period, I'm also, you know, typical, not that interested in it. You know, still always attending every class, and you know, doing what I needed to do to ensure that I got a pass, distinction, whatever it was I was aiming for at the time. But yeah, obviously distracted outside of that, you know, buying my first car, driving around, sort of slowly getting into a bit more trouble with different parts of different friends. And
it's interesting. The car is really interesting, because I think I remember you being one of the first boys in the peer group to get a car, and I seem to remember that you would always be asked to give somebody a lift.
Yeah, I guess.
And you didn't mind. You were really sort of generous about. Oh yeah, all right, no worries.
Yeah, I think the car for me was the first thing. I don't know if it's materialistic, but the first focus I had, I was like, I want to, to become a man, I need to learn how to drive. So, at 16, I was so adamant I wanted to learn how to drive. Obviously, didn't have no one to sort of teach me how to drive. By this time, I'm starting to earn a little bit of money by, all my wheeling, dealing type thing. And I remember being so focused that I was going to buy this car. And I met this Asian guy, and he had a Ford Escort, a wide Ford Escort 1.4. And he used to sometimes we used to go for drives in it. And then one day I just said, how would you sell it to me? And, this is back in the day, and he was like, yeah, but you haven't got driving license or insurance, whatever. And I was like, don't really worry about that. Just, are you going to sell me the car or not? And so I bought this car, this white Ford Escort, for 400 quid. Had no driving license, no sort of nothing, provisional license, didn't have anything. So I bought this car, and I remember this to this day, I basically didn't know how to drive it. He was just like, are you sure you know how to drive it? I was like, yeah, I know how to drive it. So at that time, I was like, you're meant to be using your accelerator foot and your brake foot are meant to be the same. But I was like accelerating with one foot, braking with my my left foot, and also using the clutch. So I basically taught myself how to drive. The first thing, as soon as I knew how to drive, I drove to Roehampton to pick up my best mate, John Michaud. And I was like, yeah, look, I've just bought a car. And and then basically taught him how to drive in it as well. It was quite an experience, actually. But yeah, I didn't, I wasn't, that's the way I kind of always used to, I guess that's how I was thinking when I was younger,
Well, separately, you can tell me how you managed to pass your test. But we'll go on to other things, I think. Yeah. So the car, I just thought that there was an example of your determination to get something kind of earlier than most. Yeah. It's a bit of a status symbol to have a car.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it's a reflection of your ambition.
Yeah.
And drive.
Yeah, and I think that was the first. Well, yeah, as I said, was one of the first things that kind of, when you're as you're growing up as a young man, you see other guys in cars and stuff, and you're like, yeah, I want to have one of them. And
then we're just getting through this year at
Carl Shorten College,
and this is the year you got the car. You're still at home with your mum.
Yeah, I'm still living at home with my mum.
So you got all your mates from school and college.
Yeah.
Life is what, okay?
Yeah, life is generally okay.
You're not really sure that you want to be a social worker.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I want to be.
Right.
At this point, and I think that's an important part to sort of highlight to other people. I think didn't feel as much pressure, but I guess there's a lot of pressure on young people and young kids to kind of sort of have an idea, either from their parents, either if they're taking their parents' idea, or have an idea of themselves of what they're going to be doing, or you got to start picking a set path for your entire life, which thinking about it now, it's quite a lot of pressure in this society and in Africa to at 16, 17, 18 to be picking your general set path for the rest of your life, that you hope to live 60 plus years, and these moments when you're only just starting to figure out who you are, you're being directed, and sort of society's putting pressure on you in many different ways to sort of pick this determined path. So I guess for me, whilst there was some pressures, I was kind of, as long as I was doing something, my mum would always say, then she would kind of be more relaxed with me at home. So when I stopped college, it was like, what are you going to do type things, the pressure instant on me. So then it was just like, okay, didn't know what I was going to do, so kind of followed my friend, which turned out, sometimes that you could look back and say, was that a good decision or bad decision? But for me, I always look at things positively, and I think it was a good decision because I'm just eliminating things that I know that I don't want to do to some degree. You could argue that I'm in business now, but not instantly going into business at that point and getting drawn into it meant that I got to experience life and trial different things.
And that's what's so interesting about the journey, that we're going to talk through the years of your life in. So that's one step towards not sure where you're going, but you're enjoying finding out.
Yeah.
You haven't got too much pressure on what you should be doing, but as long as you're doing something that looks okay from your mum.
Yeah.
And then you come to the end of this course.
Yeah, so this was a 3-year course actually.
Right, so not even the end.
Yeah, no. So, but I mean, I knew that I wasn't going to continue. So I did a full year, and I was just like, I'm done doing that. I'm not going back. Whilst it had its pluses, I just kind of I just knew. I think doing that, and that's why I think it is important for people to these work experiences. Sometimes 1 week feels like a little bit too short, but sometimes it can be just enough to give you the insight to know yourself. Like, okay, that's not for me. And I think for me, realizing whilst my personality might be quite well suited to being able to achieve quite a lot in that sector, I was very clear that it wasn't for me. It's not something that I wanted to do. And I made some great friends in that class. I learned a lot. It was basically me and my mate John Michelle and one other guy, Rexford, who was, I still in touch with a hardcore Christian, but the rest were girls. So for me, I was kind of like, learning, these were more peers than, girlfriends and everything else. So you're kind of learning about how they are, what the way they act. Sorry, that sounds like I'm studying them or whatever. But, I got to understand at a young age, being in a massive group of girls, what it was like.
Because you went to a single-sex boys' school, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it was a different. Yeah.
So bye, John Michelle. Good luck on your course.
Yeah.
But I'm going in some other direction now. Obviously, we're still mates.
Yeah.
So
still good mates. I think he carried on the course. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But we're still hanging. We're still best mates. Still rolling around.
But what did you do?
So
what kind of conversations did you have with your mum?
Yeah. So I think told my mum leaving straight. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do now? You got to get a job. Basically, that was it. If you're not gonna go to do education, you got to go get a job. So it's just like, what? What do you mean? Can't I just sort of chill out or just hang about? It's like, nah, not in this house. Instant pressure. Well, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna get up to? So I think my first job was at Moss Bros. It was a suit shop in Kingston, and it was a
shop there many times.
Yeah, so it was a part-time job. Just selling suits, which is quite. You got to have a suit, so you look sharp.
You're nearly 18 now, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I'm coming to 18, and also at this point, because I didn't really have a proper job or didn't really know what I wanted to do, I started out also getting, exploring and doing other things, meeting other friendship groups and causing a bit of trouble here and there, just learning about myself and being a teenage boy, while also at the same time, earning a bit of money. So it was a good little seeing a lot of my friends.
Still got the car?
Yeah, no, I think I've upgraded the car now.
By now you've got a new car.
Yeah, I've got a new car.
Are you legitimately driving it by now?
Yeah. So now I'm legitimately driving it. Yeah, I've got a full driving license. So yeah, there's some great stories that I can show you another time before I got that license in my Ford Escort. But I mean, we can speak about that another time.
Yeah. This job, retail, I've done that. I mean, long time ago, I had a job in retail. How did you find it?
I found it quite natural, actually. At first you're quite nervous when you go for one of these jobs, but I think retail is a great way for an introduction to any sort of young person, because you're dealing with the public. You've got a manager. You've got someone telling you what to do and how to do it. So it's a little bit like school, but a bit more. You've got a little bit more freedom, I guess, to express yourself. You are front serving, so I was front serving like suits, and then you get given a bit more responsibility. Front of house, you just get to start serving the bigger clients, etc. So for me, it was kind of at the same time, I guess I was also learning, like, whilst I did enjoy it and I was good at it, there was like, for me, it was what's the next step? Because that's what I'm always kind of thinking in the background. What's the next step? And then you kind of, for me, I was always exploring. So you'd go speak to the manager and you'd say, okay, so how long does it take you to be a manager? And you'd hear the stories, and no disrespect to anyone, you think, Jesus, what, you got to work as this for like 3 years, or or work really hard and be really good for 1 year, and then you get promoted to assistant manager, and then you inquire about what are the next steps for progression, and they all seemed a little bit dragged out, if So for me, kind of got a little bit of insight into that into the retail world.
They give you any training?
Yeah, a bit of formal training. You come in like 1 or 2 days a week, show you where all the suits are, how to size them in different sizes. I don't remember any sort of off-site training or going.
So no sales technique training or anything like that. Just it was run by personality.
Yeah, it was run by this. I remember she was this very strict. She's like a second mum.
Who's this in the branch?
Yeah, in the branch. She was very strict. I think she's this very strict Chinese lady, and she had a certain way of doing things, and everything had to be in, almost a disciplinarian. So for me, it was kind of like, whilst I did enjoy the job, it was kind of like, under her rule, I didn't see much progress very quickly. So in the background, I'm kind of really enjoying life. I'm like going out with my friends. We're starting to go out. Go out at night. Playing football was the beginning of playing football. Recreational activities as well. So I guess in the back, I had my car, so I was enjoying life back then as well. So on the more career path, which is, I guess this is more suited for the podcast. That was just another experience in another sort of milestone in my journey of knowing what it is that I enjoyed about the job and what it is that I didn't enjoy about the job.
So how long did you stay there for?
I think about a year, really. So it wasn't. So
a good chunk of time.
Yeah. I always gave whatever it was I was doing. I'd give it its fair crack and have a good go at it.
They give you commission?
No, you had to get promoted to get commission.
All right. But did you get pleasure in satisfying a customer? I mean, like when someone comes in and say, I'm looking for this, not sure, what do you think this looks like, or whatever. If you can influence them to the point where they go out genuinely satisfied,
Yeah.
Did you find?
Yeah, but I think I took to it quite easily because I got on
Just
with
happened
people.
naturally.
Yeah, it happened natural for me. So the one thing I took away from that was like I was good at sales. I was quite positive. I wasn't, and any interaction didn't, sort of frighten me or make me feel uneasy. So I was quite natural at it. I guess I didn't really think about it that much. I just knew that, there wasn't a real career path for me in that.
Well, what I wonder if you could talk a little bit about as your emerging kind of career development is what I think is key for success in any job, but particularly business, but in any job, is the ability to form relationships and kind of being able to communicate so well that, or effectively, that you build rapport quite quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So tell us a bit more about your relationship building. What you said, it happens naturally. Have you thought about what's involved there, or do you just?
Well, I think you've got to go back to,
Yeah.
if I was to try and answer that question, I just need to look back at the journey that I've been on so far. I've quite been, although I had a bit of a tough beginning. I was in Kenya, in a school where I was the only mixed race boy in an all black school, and then I think not ever feeling any different or being treated different to how I felt, and then obviously having gone through a bit of trauma and then coming over here, and feeling the same but to the opposite scale. I guess I just learned I feel like I just learned to adapt and naturally with people. Because in the culture in Kenya, you're constantly, you're being friendly. Everyone's quite open, so it's a natural thing. You don't, I think it's untoward to say, you won't find people in Kenya who are in their shell. But my natural character was, quite smiley, very happy, not afraid to approach or talk to people. So I think in my career and later on in life, that served me quite well. This sort of fearless approach to approaching people or communicating with people, and it helped me in school and in my careers as well. Because I guess I wasn't putting a label or a judgment on different people where in society, maybe in England, there are labels being thrown around. That's not to say in Kenya they weren't, because my dad was called Mzungu, which means white man. So but it wasn't said in the term of an aggressive or racist way. It was just the way. So the way I understand it here is that for whatever reason, people are sort of they're I don't know what the right word I'm looking for is. They are either socially pressured or brought up to put labels onto things, white man, black man, Asian man, so on and so forth. And schools put these labels on children. And so as you go through society, all these labels start having a meaning or an emotional response. And so I guess, trying to answer your question, for me, I wasn't accustomed to putting labels onto individuals. Anyone. So that kind of helped me sort of sail through quite well.
So you accept people for what they are.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
You don't prejudge them.
Yeah.
And remember we talked about this in the last podcast in terms of how you like to do business. You also listen carefully, and try to demonstrate some understanding of the person that you're dealing with, so that you can give them what you think they want.
Yeah, and I think the word I used to use a lot was, and I think if we go back to where we are now, empathy. Yeah, I think I used to apply that at will. I wasn't applying it to everyone and anyone. I think that's when you're quite young. You're not wise and you haven't experienced life as much as I have and you have and other people have. At that point, you're learning about what you some of the skills you're not even aware that you have.
It's true.
So back then, I was just using what I had when if I wanted to do well in a job, I'd be using all my positive attributes that I knew I had. I wasn't necessarily aware, oh, look, I'm great with people. I'm going to use this to do this or to do that. Or, I'm really empathetic. I really look at the person and take in, I wasn't thinking any of these things, like sitting here now, I can say, I think I would change the word from empathetic to appreciation, in my job, definitely. And something I try to get across to everyone in the company is you got to, instead, as I said, replacing the word empathy is appreciation. You got to appreciate what the person is going through. You got to appreciate that you're going into their house. You got to appreciate all of these different things to give you a better understanding on how best to whatever word you prefer to use, serve them, or provide a service. Or if you're helping an old lady with no lights, you can't just go in with the same approach to every single person, because otherwise you either become a robot. Anyone who joins the company, I kind of generally, we go through a process, but I'm generally choosing the person based on their personality. So whilst we try and provide training so that they can appreciate the individuals that they're going to be dealing with a day to day, whether that be customers, suppliers, wholesalers, people in the office, myself. A lot of it is I don't want them to change who they are. I want them to still have their own personality, because that's who they are. Their journey, their own life, who's made them who they are is really important. And it's just about trying to sort of give them or train them with the skills so that they can be better. One of the things I learned is that being the best person you can be for yourself is one of the most important things, because then everyone around you will appreciate and receive you becoming the best. And it's difficult. I'm very hard on myself, and it probably transcends into the people closest to me. I can be very hard on my sister, even my mom now, my fiance, some of my friends. I tell it as it is. I'm quite harsh with the way that I say things, but I think, that's just me. I don't want them to be the best version of themselves for me at all. I just want them to be the best for themselves. And I think that's some of the things that sometimes get lost in translation.
That's interesting. So whether you call it empathy, whether you call it being appreciative, I guess in there is you got to have the skill to observe carefully, listen properly, watch carefully, so that you can make the right decision, if you like, in partnership with your customer as to what the solution is. So, and you obviously learning without realising all of that in your early part of your career.
Yeah.
So after the job at Moss Bros, that was just full-time in that one job.
Yeah, that was full-time, part-time. It's quite young. You're not. I'd just done 2 colleges. I don't think wasn't that much pressure for some.
No.
So I think I was kind of, being Jack the lad outside of work and outside of.
But it came to some kind of natural conclusion, that job.
Yeah, probably got fired. I just can't remember. I'd like to say I quit, but probably didn't match the expectations of my manager then, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so she helped you on to the next part of your
journey.
Yeah,
she helped me on to the next part of my journey. Thank you, Moss Bros.
Which was what? I mean, you've had so many jobs in this
time.
So
actually, I think it's important. There's a part that I did want to share about this. At this point, I started having a lot of experiences with the police. Mm-hmm. I'm now a young mixed race boy rolling around Wimbledon Park and other areas in my car. As you said, alluded to earlier, I was always giving people lifts, and I used to get stopped a lot by the police. Luckily, I think at this point I'd managed to attain a driving license and insurance. But I do remember this is the beginning of sort of the beginning of my sort of colliding with the police in my area. I used to get stopped a lot, sort of, pulled aside and sort of. The reason why I wanted to go into this is because I think that beginning part of being a young man, I never really thought about it much in the past, but I think it did actually have a little bit of an effect on me now thinking back. I'd never, I'm not the sort of person to call something out, but I remember when we were always with my friends, and it didn't matter if I was with my white friends or my black friends, I'd always be the one who's getting pulled over, stopped, pulled aside, taken around the corner and stuff. And I guess I never really thought about it much in depth, but I think it did actually affect me at the time. And
how?
I guess I was kind of just questioning why at this time was why am I getting stopped? What's wrong with them? Why are they not getting stopped? Type thing, why is it constantly me being pulled around the corner or being searched?
So you're questioning it.
Yeah,
it affects you by asking questions. But what does that feel like? Because I'm a white bloke, never been stopped in my car by a policeman. What was that like then?
I guess it was difficult because I was thinking as well, I didn't come from a rough area. I came from, where I was living at the time with my mum, whilst we might have been one of the only black families in the area, it wasn't, I guess I was like, why is some of my best mates not being stopped? What is this experience that I'm experiencing? And when I was talking to some of my other friends, this was starting to happen a lot with them as well. When we were meeting up constantly, getting stopped, searched, these sort of things. I remember speaking to my mum about it, just briefly. Already knew what the answer would be, but I just told my mum, and she was just like, yeah, okay, just stay. She'd always say, why are they stopping you? As if it was sort of my fault.
You'd done something.
Yeah. And I guess, is it the way I'm dressing? Maybe it's my fault. Is it because I'm wearing tracksuits or is it because I got, my haircut? Is it, back then I used to have short sides, and all of these questions started to arise. So I started having quite a few runnings with the police, and also with all my white friends as well. I used to kind of mix and go to different areas and different days go with different groups. And
did you ever complain either to a policeman for stopping you or a policewoman?
At this early stage, I didn't. I kind of just accepted it. For me, I remember I didn't really challenge it. I wasn't actually getting, more just questioning it. Didn't really get angry either. Kind of just
quite cool about it.
Yeah, quite relaxed, cool, whatever. Just wasting my time, wasting your time type attitude. Always very polite, whatever. Do what you're doing, get on with it, type thing.
Okay. So nothing nasty.
No, nothing nasty until a little bit later on, actually. So. Me and my friend, actually your son, we were out one day, and we got stopped, and it was quite difficult because basically got taken around the corner, away from my other friends, and I actually had a bit of weed on me. And when he went to search and he found the weed, he literally started, he grabbed me and said, "Oh, resisting arrest," and started basically slamming my head into the concrete. And my friends who were around the corner obviously saw all of this happening, and it was quite a stressful moment. I ended up having to going to hospital, but arrested while this was going on, and then after they basically tried to throw the book at me, which is quite a stressful, very stressful time in my life at that point.
God, charge you with what?
So they charged me with possession of cannabis, but they also charged me with, they tried to say that I was assaulting the police officer.
That never happened though, did it?
No, it never happened.
How did that?
Well, because obviously I had to go to hospital and I had a massive bruise on my face. So it was kind of like, at this point, you know, I was like, this is the first time I actually was starting to fight back and complain, you know. So I was just like, there's no way you're going to get away with this, you know, the way you've treated me. And at this point, you know, my friends were doing their A levels and everything else. And, you know, yeah, I had a bit of weed on me, but it was no way to be treated the way I had been treated. And so, yeah, I went to hospital, was taken to the cell, you know. I remember reporting it, speaking to the doctor and trying to like report it and everything else. And yeah, it was quite a stressful time, because then after, you know, when you're inside being questioned and they say what you're being arrested for or whatever, when they're doing the tapes, you know, they said that I'd assaulted a police officer. And obviously for me, that was like, you can imagine, I was like, God, I was proper scared. I was you know, a little bit frightened, like, what is going on here? But I just stuck to my story and stuck to what actually happened. My friends had seen the whole thing, and they were taking it to Crown Court. You know, they were like taking it quite seriously, and luckily I was able to get some really good solicitors. There was this lady in Brixton, she decided to take on my case, and so this is a long period for about a year and 2 months, and you know, I think it made me reflect about my life, even though, you know, I had some weed on me. You know, I think also I had been, you know, not doing anything necessarily majorly dodgy, but, you know, I'd been hanging around with the wrong people. I'd been driving car, doing dumb stuff as teenagers do. And I think what it did do is shocked me into seeing, oh, okay, this is how you're going to get treated when you pretty much haven't done anything. This is how society treats you. You know, you're getting accused of assaulting a police officer, which, you know, at that point is, for me, is like one of the worst things you could be accused of. And the way I was treated and the way it made me feel, and, you know, I felt really, yeah, I don't know, it just kick-started something in me, you know, and I was like, nah, I'm not having this, you know. And so because I had to take this case quite seriously, you know, I had to have some proper solicitors. They you know, even though I'd had the report from the doctor inside the charging cell and everything else, and my mates, you know, gave their statements and had glowing references from people that knew me, you know, this thing carried on, and
massively stressful.
Oh yeah, so stressful, because, you know, they were threatening me like I was gonna go to prison, basically. Yeah. So I was just thinking about, you know, my mum and my sister. So I was so stressed. I remember, to be honest, it just kicked in, like, you know, that was quite a very stressful moment. I remember handling it, you know, can't show my mum, can't show my sister, you know, acting cool in front of all my friends and everything else. But I remember I was so stressed at this point in time. I was so basically what I decided to do was just like, right, you know, no matter what happens, I just got to get my head down and just immerse myself in work and figuring out how this, you know, I'm not currently in control of that situation, but I am in control of my life right now and what I decide to do with it.
So sort of 8 or 9 months down from the original incident, the charge of assaulting police officers is still hanging over you.
It's still hanging over me.
And then you decide to get stuck into work.
Well, I think it was maybe even quicker than that. I think it was within 3 months, you know, because obviously I was quite stressed, didn't know what to do. I was like, you know, so I just basically went and got a job in Kingston at Phones for You,
Right.
which was like high pressure sales at the time, and it quite suited me. I was like, I knew I was good at selling from Mossborough, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to go sell some phones. It interested me as well. Mobile phones were becoming a thing there. And they put me head of pay-as-you-go sales. The phone shop that they got out there is pretty much life was as jokes as that. It's quite, and I really enjoyed it. I really got stuck into it. It was a part-time job. They couldn't offer me a full-time job. So, so there was like my first 3 days going to Kingston, and I think because I really enjoyed it, I was like, okay, cool, I'm really good at this. I'm going to start like really applying myself. So then I got a job at PC World in Collierswood. And so that was Saturday and Sunday. So, so I'm doing 3 days a week at Kingston Phones for You. Yeah. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I'm now at PC World selling PCs, computers. And again, it kind of interested me. I was interested in, gadgets and that sort of thing. And both had rewards of commission. So, so now I'm finally getting rewarded for my hard work. So I'm really enjoying this. I've got this bloody court case. Every like 2 months or whatever, you go to the magistrates' courts to hear what's happening, because I pleaded not guilty. So obviously because I kept pleading not guilty, it's like it kept going back. I didn't really understand the process at the time, but I had a good solicitor who believed my story and was willing to fight my case.
Was it costing you?
Yes, at this point it was gonna cost me. It wasn't costing me, but then because I got these 2 jobs, it then started charging me, because initially you get legal aid. But then I started earning over the legal aid, so I had to start contributing to it. And as I said, so now I'm quite focused. I'm enjoying actually what I'm doing. I feel like I'm getting rewarded. The atmosphere's kind of suiting me. Also, I wasn't just in one place for like, and as this court case is looming, for some reason it was adding more pressure to me. I just felt uneasy about it, and so then I think I reached out to you at this point. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of work at the charity Quorum.
Yeah, you were at Quorum.
Didn't you come? Didn't we get you fixed up? But it was voluntary, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was voluntary. So you told me about this children's charity, and what appealed to me was in Russell Square.
Of course.
So I was thinking, namesake. Okay, yeah, my namesake, and it was. Now I'm working in PC World, and and Phones for You, quite enjoying it, and so I was just like, yeah, I need to fill these 2 other days. Because this court case is coming, but also I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I just really wanted to get into it, and I wanted to give back to what I thought.
So hold on here. Are you trying to create an impression, or are you sound like on a mission? What's going on in your mind here? Why did you have to get the 6th and 7th day filled?
I don't know. I kind of like was again. At this point, I'd been cruising. I would say I was cruising through life from when I left school, kind of just exploring. No real like drive was to get cars and to have fun and party and find myself, and creating social different groups and work yourself out, going to parties and all that sort of thing. But I hadn't really pushed myself in a long time, and obviously here was being for me being wrongly accused, and this thing being trying to be stuck onto me when I was the one who was assaulted, and they're accusing me of assaulting them. And I was just like, and my friend who'd witnessed it, so it wasn't like there wasn't any confusion about the way I felt about it. So I was quite clear about what was going on here. So I guess I was just kind of like, one, I want to challenge myself, and 2, I want to prove like you're trying to stick this label on me. You're not gonna stick this label on me. You can try all you want. We'll see how it goes, but I'm gonna create my own label, and that's of a hardworking individual, and to prove it to myself.
That makes sense.
And so I think that was my mindset then, and yeah. So then.
So hang on. we're coming to the cliffhanger here, right? So we're getting towards the end of the podcast, and so are we going to conclude it with the outcome of this case?
Yeah, it's up to you. I mean, if you think that's appropriate.
Well, I mean, as it connects to how you manage your career aspirations and your philosophy of life, that's what we want to hear. So what happens and where does it take you?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
So off you go.
Yeah. So you got me that job at Quorum. So 2 days a week. I'm now in King's Cross, and
Russell
Square, and it was that guy. His name was Gasim.
Casimir.
Yeah, it was a really lovely bloke, and he, I think he like you, but it was the first time as well. Someone in the career based, he could see my potential, and he proper tried to nurture it. And obviously, I'd turn up on time. I'd I'd go out of the way to get there. And obviously, he didn't know that I was working 3 days a week one place, 2 days a week the other. And in between that, I still managed to sort of go and see my friends and still go out partying. These are the first times where you get your first hangover and you still have to go to work. I think it's important that I mention that part as well, because at this point, because I've got this drive and I'm trying to prove to myself and to not have this label stuck on me. At the same time, you're trying to also lead a life that you created. I've got friends, I'm going to parties and stuff, and so it was the first time I learned that it's really important that you don't let the responsibilities down, because I had a lot of pressure on. So if you go out and you get drunk or you come with a hangover, you still got to get up. There's no excuses. You still got to get up and you still got to be at work on time. And I think when I think back, that was also a really important lesson. And actually, if it hadn't been in that pressure period, maybe, or in an earlier part, I might have been like, yeah, well, I'm hungover, I'm not going to work. Who's going to tell me otherwise? And so, I remember thinking a couple of times, you're just really tired. You just had a long day at work, and now you're shifting. You're going to see Gasim in King's Cross, a children's charity, to do IT. And I didn't want to let any single person down. So that was my life for a long time. And then, anyway, get to the court case. And it was interesting. I got first insight into how the criminal justice system works, and they were not prepared to drop the charges. And I was not. I said I'm not gonna plead guilty, because they were saying, "Oh, you plead guilty to possession, and we'll let you off the." So I was just like, no, I'm not compromising. I've stuck out, and I'm maintaining my story. And so the very last moment, just before we go into the court, Kingston Crown Court, they turn around to my solicitor and they say, okay, yeah, if he drops his statement about us assaulting them and everything else, we'll settle for 18 months suspended sentence. So, literally like 2 seconds before I'm about to go in, everything just changes. The whole frame of what's about to happen goes in. So yeah, we go in. I think, I can't remember if I've told that right, but I end up pleading not guilty to the offence. But I think I had to plead guilty to possession, and I ended up getting an 18-month suspended sentence. I think cannabis at the time was still Class B, so that would have been probably why. But yeah, so obviously I left that court case having been through, 18 months of, stress and hell from the perspective of, having, worried about having a criminal record, worried about having, all these things, society. I was aware of the labels that get applied to you, and had seen in the past with other peers and friends what happens when you get sort of caught up in the system. And so for me, it was just a massive relief. I forgot to mention actually, the reason why I got given a suspended sentence was when the judge was asking about what I was doing. I think they wanted to actually give me a bit of community service, but when obviously
they saw you working 7 days a week.
Yeah, they couldn't. They didn't have any time to be able to allocate towards any community service, and I think the judge was sort of, impressed and amazed that from his perspective that I had turned my life around from any sort of path that was being laid out by the prosecution that I was going to be on, and whether I was on that path or not, I had made sure that for my own reasons that I turned any chance of these labels being applied to me, one, and two, that I had probably flirted with, some of the things that could have led me into getting into trouble, and obviously learning as well, being a young mixed race or being a young black man in London, you don't have the same privileges, or you are looked at and treated differently. Whilst I would never allow myself to feel that way, I started to learn that this is actually a fact and the reality of what actually is going on. So that was a sort of, I guess, a good place to end that part and chapter of my life.
Yeah, that must have been very, very difficult for you and all the people around you. I'm sitting back because I'm just mulling over how hard that must have been, and there's a lot of talk these days about white privilege, and it's a fact, even though there's many out there that would probably argue against this, but it is a fact that white people don't get treated in the same way in the UK when it comes to all kinds of aspects of life. And not going to get on a political platform about it, but I do feel not privileged. I feel almost sad that things like that never happened to me, and things like that have happened to you umpteen times. It's just not fair. Just outrageously not fair.
I guess, but I try not to think of it in that light. I know we've discussed this in the past, and I agree it's not fair, but I think it's the way that these things happen to you, and as hopefully I've shown in my own story, it's really about how you react to them that I think it is also the key into changing these behaviours from my perspective.
No, and I think everyone that knows you admire some of the characteristics that you've got that deal with, essentially this was like bullying maximised for the first time since you were at school. You had all that to deal with people treating you unfairly and abusing your rights and so on, and you got through it, you fought through it. You hadn't had that sort of thing happen to you for years leading up to 18, and then you end up against a different kind of authority and you're being abused again, and you have actually dealt with it without wanting to be vengeful. You just defend yourself, fight through it, and move on, and that's to be commended. I'm not so sure that there's lots and lots of people of colour that have been able to do that.
Yeah, no, I know. Some of my friends have been treated a lot worse, and I guess that's...
Well, no, it's not about whether you've been treated worse, it's about how you deal with it, and the effect that it has on you. And some people are more, resilient than others. And the effects of being treated regularly badly has had a terrible effect on the mental health of so many people of colour. And it's just shocking to observe, and we've had a real live story to listen to here, and it as I said, it's fantastic credit to you that you don't get caught up in the pain of it. You just want to grow through it and move on.
Yeah,
that's a bit of a sad, sort of somber way to end the podcast, but this is part of your journey.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's about as I said, it's about taking these things that happen in your journey, whether they're positive or negative, you know, and sometimes, you know, you should stand up maybe and do more about it, and, you know, highlight it, bring it to the correct, you know, individuals, parties or whatever. But I guess my journey has led me to think that, you know, for me, I learn from these experiences. You know, I try to take the positives and the negatives, and you know, take them as lessons that hopefully can help other people in the future, and help myself. And, you know, that's not to say that these things can't be later on, you know, with these experiences, you know, you can't later on use them to again help other people or give insight into the way things actually were or are.
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of conclude then with you round about the age of 19, 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had quite a lot of college experience, quite a lot of retail experience.
Yeah.
Huge amount of social, psychological pressure, and you're relieved to get through that phase of your life with a 18-month suspended sentence.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
I guess the next time we come together, we'll talk about what you do.
Well, yeah, it's quite interesting because you I guess you don't realise actually, and for a lot of people who might have experienced this or you know, had people who've experienced this, you know, it's not actually over, is it? You've got an 18-month suspended sentence hanging over your head. So you've got 18 months and you can't get in trouble with the law, so at all. And if your experience is you're constantly being stopped and harassed, you know, if calling it what it is at the time, you know, being
feels like
being harassed. Your friends are, I'm driving around in my car, you know, you're thinking, well, it is over and I'm relieved. But, you know, I remember thinking, Jesus, 18 months, like, okay, because not only whatever you do or supposedly do comes back at you, they also drag back the supposed past.
Mm. So so it's never really over, but it was kind of over in a sense.
Yeah, no, I'm just giving a bit of insight too. It is over, but it's not.
Yeah, it's never really over. Okay, well, thank you, Russell, for sharing again on the Russell Hewes The Journey podcast. You've been brave again, talking about your personal experience, and we hope people have enjoyed listening and possibly learnt some useful insights that they can apply in their own lives.
Yeah, and thanks again, Steve, for joining us, and yeah, see you in 2 weeks' time.
Hopefully. Thank you.
And anyone who has any comments or questions that you'd like to put forward to us, we'd be happy to receive them, and we'll try our best to answer them or raise them in the next or future podcasts.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.